Okay, so I guess I'll start the same way. I'm Laëtitia. This is my first time. I just did that for that. I'm the director of operation at FoodShare. I've been with FoodShare for about a bit more than a year now. My background is in sustainability management. I'm from France, so if you were wondering where that accent is coming from, that's where it's coming from, so you don't spend your whole time just thinking about that. And yeah, I mean, I joined the not-for-profit world probably like 7 years ago after graduating from school, and somehow ended up at FoodShare, I think by luck, and it's been pretty great. I like to do things a bit differently, so I'm not going to jump into who is FoodShare and what we do, although I'm sure some of you in the room, I feel like yeah, I was like, I know you. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with the work that we do, but I thought I would do something a bit different and start by kind of looking at what food access looks like in Toronto, which will lead us to what we do at FoodShare. So I usually start off by saying, I'm assuming everybody in the room is like, food is a fundamental right. Hopefully, if not, maybe you should not stay for this presentation. But so the right to food has been ratified by Canada since, I think, 1976, which a lot of people actually don't know. And what that means, it doesn't mean that the government has to give free food to people. It means that they have to create the condition for people to be able to feed themselves, their family, and their community with dignity. And yet, this is what happened every day in Toronto. So 1 in 8 people or Torontonians experience food insecurity. We know that if you're a person of color, that number is actually double. There's about 17%, so like almost 1 in 8 children that are food insecure, which means they go to school like with an empty belly. And there's a lot of misconception about the fact that food insecurity is something related to the fact that you don't have employment. There's actually a lot of people who are employed and are still experiencing food insecurity. So that number is like the 62%. If we're looking at what kind of barriers are there, like in terms of the access to food, so our office is located in the Westmount Dennis area. So if you're not really familiar with where that is, which I'm sure a lot of you wouldn't, because it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. So it's around Keele and Eglinton. And in that area, there's about 3 neighborhood improvement areas. So to be fair, when I studied at FoodShare, I had no clue what neighborhood improvement areas were, because my background is not in food at all, food access, or social justice. But those, so there's 31 of those neighborhoods in Toronto. What they are is they've been identified by the City of Toronto as area where that lack funding and resources. So those are neighborhoods that have historically been underfunded and underserved. In terms of like, if you're looking at the demographic, the rate compared to the rest of the city in terms of employment, level of education, income level is like much lower, or depending on which one you're looking at, but much worse than the rest of the city. And so what we've done is, in that neighborhood, we've kind of done an assessment, because we do have some programs that really focus in that specific area. And if you're looking at what are the things that prevent people from accessing food or being food secure, a lot of it is income, so income level. So if you look at some of those numbers here, I think it says that almost like 2/3 of the people say they worry that they would run out of food before before having money to be able to buy more. So clearly what it tells you is that, okay, there's a problem with the income level. The other thing is geographically. So there's a lot of places in Toronto, believe it or not, especially when we're like in here, in this area where there's like food everywhere. You go outside, there's like a grocery store, there's everything. But there's a lot of like food desert in Toronto. So there are a lot of communities that there's nothing closer to 1 kilometer for them to access fresh produce. And then the other thing is mobility. So there's a lot of like seniors, residents, or people who have like some sort of disability that prevent them from like easily accessing the closest grocery store. And so this leads us to like FoodShare and what we do. So obviously, as an organization, we believe that's not how things should be. And so this is why we work towards modeling a system where we can increase food access for Torontonians. So as of now, or at least a few weeks ago, we were Canada's largest food security organization. So we are not for profit and charity. We've been, I think, doing programming for like the past 30 years. And our whole goal is really increasing access to fresh produce, so mostly veggies and fruits. And we do that through community-led initiatives. So our approach is not to say, hey, we have the solution and this is what you should be doing in your community. It's about working with communities, understanding their needs, the challenges, and then trying to come up with solutions. Every year, so I mean, those are like, numbers, but so every year we reach out to 260,000 people in Toronto through our programs. So, because it would be taking me way too long to actually talk about all the things we do at FoodShare, I'm just going to try to give you a snapshot of what it is. So the first picture I'm not really good with right and left and things, so we'll start from that end and go around. But the first one is, so we have a really cool program, Urban Ag program. Every summer we employ 30 youth. Those are youth that are high school students. They get credits for getting the diploma through that program, but they also get paid. The 30 youth that are selected are youth that would face systemic barriers to accessing those type of opportunities for many, many different reasons. So they get paid between $15 and $18 an hour. They learn about how to grow food, how to sell it, how to market it. They also get one-on-one training and support to figure out what to do next. What do I do after high school? We also have a pretty cool compost program. We do about 15,000 pounds of compost if you're lucky enough to get access to, I think they call it the black gold. It's honestly the best thing. I've used it on my tomatoes for the first time this year. I've always had really bad tomatoes. This year it was amazing. So it's really cheap and it's really good. So that's one of the things we do around urban agriculture. The two ladies, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but they're part of our Good Food Markets. The little guy with the apple, so every year we do a lot of advocacy work, and every year we have, in March, we have a crunch, I think it's make some noise, and so there's about 280 people that at the same time crunch an apple, eat an apple, to make some noise for national food policy. So that's kind of a really cool event, but the goal is really push for national food policy. In the middle is our executive director that is sitting in our warehouse. Again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on. The bottom part with all the numbers and mapping. So we have a team of people that are part of our student nutrition team, and so what they do is they help, I think, about 800 schools in Toronto to set up lunch or snack and breakfast program for kids. So that's about 200,000 kids every day that get a snack, a breakfast, or something to eat when they come in school. And so that whole team supports the process of implementing that. The last one, which I think I'm going to move to the next slide, it's so this is the Good Food Machine, which is the program of Loyalty One. I would say if we're putting things in terms of tech content or context, this is probably where we're the most advanced. You'll see after what I mean by that. But so it's a program of Loyalty One. FoodShare help with the curriculum and the training of the teachers, and so we have everything online. So all the curriculum are online, available to everybody who I think anyone can register really. So you could start your own Good Food Machine or Green Tower if you want it and have access to those resources. I think the Good Food Machine are about 200 schools across Canada, and so we also do training. So for remote communities, it's done through video conferencing system, and for people in Toronto, it's done in person. And then, so the challenge I'm going to bring is related to our food distribution initiative. So I'll give you a little bit of context, and hopefully it's not too boring. And then we jump into the challenge. So we have a food distribution. So as I said, what we do is we try to increase access to fresh produce. One of it is food distribution, the other one is food education. Part of my role is really focused on the distribution aspect, not so much on the education. And so as part of our food distribution, we separate them into two different things. So one is social enterprises, and I'm going to jump into a bit of a definition of what social enterprises is, because I know sometimes I go in a room and people are like, what are you talking about? What is this? And the other one is programs. So for anyone who is familiar with like not-for-profit world, that's our traditional type of initiative. So we have 4 initiatives as part of our food distribution: the Good Food Box, the bulk produce sales, the Good Food Market, and the mobile market. I'm just going to give you a little bit of more detail on those. Our Good Food program, just to give you an idea of like what it is as part of FoodShare, so it's about a bit more than 2 million in sales. That's about like 35 to 40% of like the revenue of the organization, just so you can have a bit of context. I mean, if you're able to figure out how many produce the 2.25 something million pound represent, I actually can't, but that's how many produce go through our warehouse and get into schools and agencies and communities. We have about 30 staff, so just for that initiative. We have a huge warehouse. This is why we're actually located in the middle of nowhere, because you need space for that. And we have a bunch of trucks that do all the delivery. So if we're looking at our social enterprises, so is there anyone who wants to take a crack at like what is a social enterprise?
Not for profit.
Or is it?
Yeah, okay, I will start here.
I think it's an organization, not-for-profit organization that its main focus is about employing hard-to-employ people.
So it's one aspect. Yeah, it can be. Yeah, sure. Let's try it over. Maybe we can.
It also is entrepreneurial and for business, but the bottom line isn't profiting for shareholders, it's profiting for that community.
So it's pretty much like, I mean, there's many different definitions, and like in Ontario, there's no legal actual definition. I think in Quebec they have their own way of defining that in the legislation, and there's like some structure around it. Ontario does not have that. But yeah, it's pretty much like it can be either a non-for-profit or for-profit business. The corporate structure can be whatever. But the goal is really about so you're selling a service, but at the end, it's going back into the communities or, so that's what it is. It's going back to the community. So the goal is that even for not-for-profit, the goal is that you bring in revenue in the organization, so it's not something that should cost you money. Ideally, something that brings money into the organization. Some of them are employment social enterprises. So there are specific examples. FoodShare is not. So the employment social enterprises, it's basically when you're looking at your beneficiary, those are the people you would employ through your social enterprise. So it could be there's like I'm trying to find about one. There's the Eva print shop, which is located somewhere the other way, but around the same street. It employs, so they have a youth shelter, and they've developed a social enterprise. And so they hire the youth from the youth shelter so they can get work opportunities. So that one is an employment social enterprise. FoodShare, we don't focus necessarily on the type of people we employ. We do look at it, but it's not our main goal as an organization. Ours is to bring money back in the organization so that we can support other programs that we do. So the first one is our bulk sale. So what we do is we buy in bulk. We roughly work with about 250 schools right now, so they place the order through us. So it's really just imagine big pallet of food that just come in our warehouse. We just repack everything by order, and then it goes out into schools and agencies. We've recently expanded our mandate to do that outside of just school and agencies. because this is a social enterprise and we need to bring in revenue in the organization. So yeah, if you know any businesses that could be interested, like just send them my way. But this is our largest, like the bulk produce sale is about 70% of the revenue of the good food programs. This is our biggest thing, and it is a true social enterprise. It brings money in, helps support, like pay for the operational cost, helps support the organization. The next one, so that one is in transition. That one is the perfect example of like taking something that was designed as a program into something that is a social enterprise, because as a program it does not meet the need, like it does not fit with our mission, or it doesn't meet the criteria that you would look at in terms of social impact. So the Good Food Box, for, you know, if you're familiar with like Mama Earth Organic Fresh from City, it's same thing. I think they took the idea from us because we've been doing that for 30 years. Just we didn't adjust to like going online, or things as simple as that. So yeah, it's like a box full of like fresh produce, different size, different prices. You get it delivered to your doorstep, and and we offer like a mix of like local, organic, imported, because for us as an organization, we need to make sure that everybody, you know, not everybody in Toronto, like the food from like Southern Ontario is not necessarily a representation of like everybody's food. So we kind of try to keep it accessible. And so yeah, so the big project we've been doing in the past, or that we've been doing for the past couple of months, is actually going online. So it used to be a system where people would like place an order by fax, if you can believe that. Yeah. Or email, or sometimes phone, and then anyway. So when I started, that was one of the projects I got put on, and so we've just launched it 3 weeks ago. It's been pretty, so far, successful, really painful on the back end, and actually we use Shopify, so I think someone in the room was from Shopify. But yeah, so, you know, if you're interested, I would say you can check the website, but this was our first step as the Good Food program to move into tech. So now looking at the food distribution programs, so we have the Good Food Market. So what we do is Good Food Market, they're similar to Farmers Market, except that there's local and imported produce, usually it's a bit cheaper, and the community kind of decide what goes into the market. So those are, FoodShare help them set up the market, but then communities kind of take the lead on them, and we just support them in like, the day-to-day operation if they have any questions. This is where they are in Toronto, just to give you an idea. You know, it's like they're kind of everywhere. And the mobile market, so that one is kind of my favorite thing that we do. So the mobile market, it's a retrofitted TTC bus that looks like a market stand. That one is operated by FoodShare, where the Good Food Market are community-led markets. This one is operated fully by FoodShare. We go in 10 different communities, mostly in neighborhood improvement areas, so where we know there's like really, like the access to food is like non-existent or really hard. And so we apply, you know, like a really minimal market to help like cover some of the basic costs, but the reason why the mobile market and the Good Food Market are considered programs is because we rely on external funding to continue to operate those. So there's no way by the revenue we get from the sales that we can actually support those programs. And if we're looking at what is the social impact of those programs, this is really like in line with what we're trying to achieve as an organization. This is why those will remain as program and not move into a social enterprise where you may then shift your demographic and things like that. So yeah, that's how it looks like when it's like full of veggies and stuff. So it's pretty cool. So the challenge, which I'm sure some people will laugh, because it made me laugh when I first started. So our database and inventory system is a 96 accessed thing. So at some point in the near future, this is going to crash, which is a bit problematic. So this is what we've been using to like manage the customer account, place the order with our suppliers, so everything goes in that database, and hopefully, so far things have been working fine, but we all know that it will stop. There's obviously I'm a big finance kind of person, so I love report analysis and stuff. I can't do anything with that thing. It's like just to get a report, it's like a total nightmare, never tells me what I need to know. We can't make any changes. So, for example, it's been developed by someone, and so if I want to change the address, I can't do that. I need to call the person, and he's the only one who knows how to do that, or have access to it. So this is a huge issue, and obviously because it's like a 96 access thing, the only way I can enter the system is I have to be plugged in. So not even on the Wi-Fi, I have to physically. I'm not such a tech person, but I have to be connected to the server. So it's been run on just I think there's only 2 computers in our office that actually can still support it. We have to run a virtual machine on it. It's just a nightmare. Doesn't make sense, and I know it's going to crash. So what we're looking at is, finding something that can help us. And the one thing I should notice is that it doesn't help us having a proper inventory system, which is something we need, and especially looking at the different, right now everything is one big box, so I don't know how much I use for the markets versus how much I use for the bulk, which from an accounting side, or even financial analysis, just makes no sense. So yeah, we're looking at something that can help us do that. That is obviously customer, user friendly. So the one thing I should say is, starting at FoodShare, is especially in the department I oversee, I don't have a lot of tech people. So even using Shopify sometimes is a bit of a challenge. So it has to be super user friendly or really easy to figure out. Ideally something that we can customize. So if I want to change the address, create a new price list or new type of group customer that has that profit margin, apply on it, I can do that and don't need to call someone who one day will disappear, and then it's we have no way to actually do anything. And low cost. So the reason of the low cost is, we are not for profit and charity, so obviously access to funding to do something like that is limited. But also we don't want to have to pass those costs on to the end user customer. So that's pretty much that. And I had one last thing. That was just if you want to reach out. And now I'm lost with the technology. It doesn't let me do it, but anyway, this was this one. No, not this one. Anyway, it's somewhere in here. Yeah, this one. So if you want, to learn more about us, this is where you can find us. Eat your veggies. We always say that. If you're interested in the Good Food Box, obviously that's always something that supports us. And then if you want to follow up, or feel free to use my email. And thank you.
Awesome. Let's give it up one more time for Laëtitia. I think my favorite part about your presentation was when you got to the problem and then all the developers in the room physically leaned in and eyes went bright and they're like, ooh, a database problem. I can solve that. I have so many ideas for you. Give us a second as we get set back up, but we are going to go with announcements and then we'll follow by project pitches. So announcements, just community news, anything you want to